Today we're going to be talking about RVs versus houses. When we recently stayed in an Airbnb, we found ourselves saying, oh, this is way different than our RV. This is better. This is not so nice. And there were a lot of pros and cons to both once we sat down and really started thinking about it. You know, not necessarily that one is better than the other, though, you know, we obviously have our opinion currently. That doesn't mean that we won't ever live in a house again. And so we're going to take you through all these different things, and at the end, you can decide house, RV. The first thing we're going to talk about is the water situation.
So in a house, you have an unlimited water supply. You could just let that thing run. Not that you should,
No.
But you could theoretically.
Huge shower in a house compared to the RV shower, and unlimited hot water compared to an RV. You can wash your hair, you can shave, you can be in here as long as you want, and you don't have to worry about it. I'm gonna take as long a shower as I want.
In an RV, it's different. If you're in a full hookup campground, you could let the water run there too. You have a huge water supply if you're hooked up, but anytime you're not at a campground, if you're boondocking, like we've done a whole lot of in this last year, you definitely have to conserve water every chance you get.
And even if you have an unlimited water supply in a campground, that doesn't mean that your water heater is keeping up. So if you're taking a shower, you may need to take a quick shower. What that looks like is you turn on the water really fast, get your hair and everything wet, turn it off real fast, or you can use this little switch to temporarily turn off the water. Then you shampoo, soap everything down, turn the water back on, quick, done. And we can take a shower with 1 gallon per person, and I can even wash my hair on that. And then there's the bathtub. That is something that a lot of people say they miss when they hit the road. There is no bathtub in an RV, at least not the way you're used to in your house. Some RVs have a small bathtub or a little lip, and you could bathe your child in there, but really for a full-grown adult, there aren't many options for a bathtub in an RV. Not that some people haven't figured that out. Props to them, we haven't, but we do have a way to bathe our kids. When we started, we had a collapsible laundry basket, but as the kids got older and they are stronger and weigh more, they'd lean on the side and it would just collapse and the water would whoosh out.
Goodbye, bath.
Yeah, so now we just use a plastic tub. They bathe in that. Now, when we're in a house, though, way more tub space.
Yeah.
They love it.
It's not even a comparison.
No.
The tubs in the house are just so much better.
So much better. You make do. There are ways to do it. But when you can be in a house and you can fill that tub, have a nice soak. Oh, yeah, I think the house wins on that one.
Definitely. So next, let's talk about space. In an RV, you're never gonna have as much space as you are in a house. We have a pretty good size RV, and altogether with the loft and all the space that you could use for living here, we've got about 450 square feet, which is a lot for an RV. A house, totally different. You've got so much extra space to walk around. You don't get hung up trying to walk around in the kitchen and coming across another person and trying to figure out how you're gonna get past. So there is that.
Yeah, so we are lucky when it comes to the RV. Everybody does have their own space, and the kids do still run around here, but it's no comparison to the space that you have in a house.
Yeah, especially with the kids. It's nice in a house when you can have a little bit of a separate play area for them, and not that the toys would always stay in that spot, because they won't, and they certainly don't here, even when we try to keep it contained in their room or something. But yeah, having the smaller space with kids, you definitely have just more stuff out and about everywhere, but it is a lot easier to clean up.
That's true. So on to that point, it gets messy fast in the RV, but you can clean up fast. I mean, if you run around and pick everything up,
10 minutes maybe? The whole house can be done in 10 minutes.
At least organized. And then the cleaning part, of course, takes a little bit longer, but each of the surfaces are smaller. You know, your countertop space in your kitchen is smaller. Your bathroom space is typically smaller. So there's that. And then we have a built-in vacuum cleaner that can reach to every corner of the RV. It has a long hose. And so we can vacuum, you know, in about the same amount of time, 10 minutes or so, and be clean top to bottom in the RV. The house, I remember those days.
Yeah. When you're in a house, do you feel like you're just cleaning forever?
Yeah. Have visitors coming over, and we'd be like, oh, now we get to clean all day.
Yeah, pretty much.
So more space in a house, less space in the RV, but it's faster to clean up the RV than it is the house.
So along the lines of water and cleaning up, the next big point with a house is that you don't have a sewer that you have to empty. I don't have to empty this. I don't even care where it goes. I just press this button. Ta-da!
Right. You just flush. Don't have to think about it ever again.
At least you hope you don't. If you do, there's a problem. But like an RV too, you can have problems there. Anyway, with an RV, that is kind of a constant battle. That's actually, we've always said, especially when we're boondocking or at a campground with partial hookups, the sewer is the most important connection. We've got power taken care of.
With our solar setup.
And a generator, and you have holding tanks to bring water with you, but you only have so much capacity for sewer, and not all campgrounds have a sewer hookup. It's not uncommon to be at a campground that has power and water, but no sewer hookup. So then you are at the mercy of whatever your holding tanks can manage.
Before you have to go to the dump station or move elsewhere. Yeah.
Clearly, this is the best part of RVing right here. If you're at a campground, without full hookups, you still have that to deal with. And even when you are at a campground with full hookups, you still have to make sure you dump the black tank occasionally, because you're not just going to leave all your tanks open all the time. They mix, and you don't want that. No. It's not that bad, but it is something that you do have to think about, and it is just another resource that you do have to manage in an RV versus a house.
Although from my perspective, I don't have to deal with it in house, and I don't have to deal with it in the RV either.
You're
welcome.
Thank
you. Now let's talk internet. Internet is one of the most important things for RVers that work from the road. And even if you don't work from the road, you want connectivity to be able to check your email, watch your shows, catch up with your friends and family. All those reasons, internet connectivity is so important.
Yeah, I would say, like, power and water and sewer aside, this is probably the thing I notice the most when we go and visit friends and family, or when we stayed in a rental house or whatever. You get there, you hook up to the internet, and you're just blown away by how amazingly fast it is.
How's the internet speed?
Oh, it's awesome. I would say this has been a huge bonus to being at an Airbnb, is unlimited internet, and it's fast. You don't get those kinds of speeds in an RV pretty much ever. Internet in an RV is pretty much always based on a 4G, now maybe 5G cellular internet connection, and those speeds can vary wildly depending on where you are, proximity to a cell tower, and what's even worse is just how congested those towers get. So, like, in a house, you can have 100 megs up, 100 megs down, it's screaming fast almost all the time, very few problems. This is a constant battle for us in the RV. Just having to work, trying to get things done, the internet doesn't cooperate sometimes, or it's painfully slow. You find a way and it works, but the house definitely wins on the internet front.
Definitely. Kevin, the internet's down again. Could you reset it, please? Really gotta get this video uploaded.
All right, I'll try to reset it. I'm not really sure if this will actually make a difference, but we'll give it a go.
No, still not working. All right, I'll just use my hotspot. Having said all that, that's with us having multiple forms of internet backups with several different networks, and also a Wii boost so we can boost our cellular signal, and you still sometimes run into problems.
Yeah.
And in those cases, we find ourselves a coffee shop or go into town. You find a way.
Yeah.
The issue is, though, checking as best you can beforehand before you go. If you need that connectivity, we find a campsite location where we think that the connectivity will be good. If it doesn't pan out for whatever reason, you know, then the question is, are we willing to move? Or can we drive somewhere? Such as RV life. For the most part, it's not a problem. But again, in the house, it's just always there.
So, being that in an RV and going and seeing neat places is the bane of your internet connection, oftentimes, that's also another huge perk to RVing, is the fact that your scenery around you, the view out your window, things to do in the area, always changes, which is what is so wonderful about travel.
I mean, that's really the point.
Yeah, that's exactly the
Most
point.
of the time, right? Going, seeing new places, or traveling the country or the world, seeing friends and family and things to do and beautiful scenery. In a house, you look out your windows and the scenery never changes. Your house isn't moving. Even if you love your view from your windows, your location, your scenery, you might think about, well, what are we going to do today, or what are we doing this weekend? And the answer is oftentimes the same thing. All right, what should we do today?
We could go to that park that we like.
Oh, we've been there so many times. Is there anything new to do around here?
I think we've kind of done everything.
What about that national park we've never been to?
That's kind of far. I don't really feel like driving that way. Let's just watch TV.
All right. That doesn't mean that it's bad, and you will probably have lots of amazing things to do in your area. In fact, most people that live in a place have tons of things that they could go see and do that they've never thought of doing before. I mean, every place that we've lived and then we've moved away from, we can think back and think, why did we never go here,
Yeah.
or here, or here, or do this or that?
Yeah.
So if you're living in a house, or if you're stationary in an RV even, find things to do in your area that maybe you hadn't thought of before, or revisit things you haven't seen in a while. But in RV, it just takes that to a whole new level.
All the new experiences and seeing the new places. But it's also one of those things, which is why we're not going to sit here and say like one is better than the other, because not everybody's into travel all the time. There's a lot of stress that comes with travel as well. You've got a lot of plans to make. We've got a lot of things to pack for the kids, even though we take our house with us all the time. But for us, that is the entire point. I think it is for most people, is just having the change of scenery, going and seeing neat things, and having that all the time.
Or, you know, some people live near their family, and so they love being around their family and their friends that they've established. Our family is spread out all over the country, and even, you know, across the ocean in Germany. So for us, it makes sense to travel, so then we can see all these new places and visit friends and family in all sorts of places. And also, I will tell you, as we've traveled, our bucket list just keeps getting longer.
You might see it as a recurring theme in some of our videos where we get someplace and we're like, wow, we had no idea this was even here. And that happens a lot. And that is exactly what causes that list of things to do to just grow and grow and grow. What do we want to do while we're here? Because there is a lot.
Yeah. So there are at least 3 hiking trails that I was thinking that we could do. There's the bike trail that you found.
Found this really cool restaurant we'd like to visit.
That brewery, playground, the zoo.
Well, you know, if there's just too much to get done, we can always extend.
Yeah, or we'll just put it on the bucket list and come back someday. One more thing.
Yeah.
The view out an RV window isn't always beautiful either. I mean, sometimes it's wonderful and you think, thank goodness we've got such a great spot. And then sometimes you're, nose to nose with your neighbor's RV.
Yeah, we've been in campsites where we couldn't even get the awning out all the way, otherwise it would have run into our neighbor. So you do have the really, really great places, but you have the not so nice ones mixed in with it too.
Yeah.
So another big win in a house is how easy it is to get your mail. So another nice thing about a house is actually having a permanent address to send packages to all the time. This is kind of one of those things you take for granted, just how easy it is to get mail. That's not that easy when you're on the road.
Yeah, you hear that question a lot. How do you get your mail? And there are several options. So you can have them sent to a family member's house, a friend's house. There are mail forwarding services, which is what we have. You want to tell them about ours?
Yeah, so we use a company called St. Brendan's Isle since we are Florida residents. And so that's really great. We always have an address that people can send packages to. You can get your, bank statements or whatever official mail you need to that address too. It's easy to have your mail sent to you, but you do have to think ahead a little bit on how you're going to receive that package. Not every RV park will receive packages for you, especially if you're in a state park or a county park or something like that.
Private campgrounds, though, often do, so just ask what their policy is.
There's also the option of general delivery at a post office. Make sure that the post office that you want to receive it at actually accepts general delivery.
Because not all do.
Yeah, not all of them do. So it helps to call that exact post office to find out. But I found that that works really well, especially for getting our mail forwarding.
The only thing to be aware of there is that it has to be shipped USPS to the post office. So that's the tricky thing with Amazon is, as far as we know, you can't pick or have them guarantee how they're going to deliver it. So for Amazon,
there's a couple of options there. Amazon lockers work really well. If you happen to not be in an area where they have Amazon lockers, you can have that kind of stuff shipped to the UPS store, and they'll charge you $5 per package to pick it up. And those have to be sent either UPS or FedEx. I got this one, general delivery at the post office, and all of these just came from the UPS store.
That gives you lots of options. So even though for living in a house, it's kind of like, oh, I can take this for granted because all I do is go out to my mailbox or I open my door and my package is here. I mean, that's nice when we're visiting friends and family and things just show up. Like, this is so easy. Yeah. But there are ways to get your mail on the road, and they're really not that difficult. It's just a few extra steps and thinking ahead how you're going to do that.
All right, so the next thing on the list is house stability. And what we mean by that is you typically have your network of friends. If you go to church, you know where you're going. You know where you're gonna go shop for your groceries, that kind of thing. In an RV, it's a bit different. You can obviously visit friends and family, but for finding a church or finding where you're gonna go grocery shopping, you're pretty much looking that stuff up and finding something new every time, which is, that actually has its pros and cons too, but it is more that you have to do.
So depending on what you like best, it's going to help you decide if that's a pro or a con for you. Like some people want that stability, want that network, want to live in one place and grow old there, and they love that. You lived a long time in one place as you grew up versus me, being a military brat and living in a military family. We moved every few years. And so it's very different. So not that there aren't wonderful things about both, but
it's just different.
That's the theme. That's the theme of our video.
I know, right?
It's just different.
I know. Neither one's good or bad. It's all just different.
Yeah, so it's nice to have the knowns versus the unknowns. It's nice that your friends are nearby and your kids have maybe certain programs that they're a part of, or play groups or friend circles, all those things. But you can do all that in the RV, and that's why we wanted to bring this up. You can be a part of an online community. You can find like-minded people on the road for anything that you're interested in. You just have to be a little more intentional about it.
Just because you're going to be living this sort of nomadic lifestyle and moving around a lot doesn't mean that you have to be alone all the time or just you and your family. There are lots and lots of ways and lots of resources out there to help you meet up with other people. Your kids will have plenty of other people to play with. It's been really great. All right, so next up is costs. If you want to compare costs in an RV to a house, 99% of the time I think the RV is going to be cheaper. But by how much? Now that's a really interesting thing. We are planning on doing a budget series, so you will see a series of videos about how much we spend over the last several years that we've been on the road. I think the biggest savings is just on mortgage or rent. You have a lot more control over those costs in an RV. You don't have to spend a lot in campgrounds. There are ways to do it cheaply. You can boondock a lot. And I would say for us, we came from Denver, which was a very expensive city, and we saved a whole lot over the rent that we were paying when we were there.
A lot of variables go into what your RVing costs are going to be. Your family size, what kind of travel you like to do, how much you like to eat out, how much you like to pay on activities, and just, I mean, all sorts of things, right? And so that's why we have started a monthly blog post and Instagram post about our RVing budget and our actual costs. And sometimes you'll see we are over or under those categories, and you can see how those fluctuate. Some costs won't change very much between living in a house and living in an RV, like groceries probably don't change that much. You still have to feed yourselves and you're still eating the same amount. For us, that's actually starting to cost more because our kids are eating more and more and more. So a house, you have a lot more fixed costs. They don't fluctuate, you know, unless you're going to refinance. Your mortgage is going to stay the same. Your rent is going to stay the same. It might even go up. As you're RVing, you have a lot more control over some of those variable costs, and you can boondock for a week if you need to save money, or if you've got a little more wiggle room and you want to splurge a little bit, you can go to a fancy resort and stay there for a week. So I would say that's the biggest thing, wouldn't you, with RV costs versus house costs, is some costs are naturally higher for a house. You have all your utilities. Some costs might even be higher in an RV because you're traveling and wanting to go eat out more or see things that you wouldn't be seeing in your hometown. But you can adjust a lot more in an RV if you want, if you're willing to, then sometimes you can in a house.
Up next is repairs. You will have repairs in an RV. Things do break. You're basically shaking your house like an earthquake every time you move it down the road. So you do have things that break. You will have repair costs, but they're typically a bit less than in a house.
I guess it depends on what has happened, right? And like what your insurance does or doesn't cover. Those are all factors.
That's true. I guess another factor there too would be is if you do the work yourself versus having somebody else do it. But you have that in a house as well. I think overall the repair costs in an RV are typically a little bit less.
Yeah, at least to our knowledge.
Yeah, and although I would say in some cases they're more frequent, but it's like fixing a lot of little things here and there.
Other than that, the thing that I would mention is that in a house, if you have to have a repair done, you can typically continue to live there, right? Unless it's something major. And even then, there's often enough space for you to say, well, we're gonna move into this part of the house while this part of the house is renovated. In an RV, if something major has to be done, you're probably gonna be moving out, at least for a few days. Like we had to do when we took our RV into the shop and moved into an Airbnb for a few days. That's not always the case. Sometimes you can just take it in and they take care of it in the span of a day. Or, you know, maybe you can park in the lot of the repair shop and stay the night in your rig. But that's not always the case. And for us, that just wasn't convenient with a family and kids, so we moved out into an Airbnb and actually really enjoyed that. But then you have to factor in those extra costs as well. So consider repairs as you're considering house versus RV. So what about if you want to have guests come to visit you?
In a house, that's usually pretty easy. Even if you don't have a dedicated guest room, you've got obviously a lot more room to accommodate guests. In an RV, it's a bit different. Again, we're in a pretty good size one.
This couch folds out, and when it does, I mean, the entire living space basically is converted to another bedroom. So we just have to turn everything into guest quarters right before bed and then reset it all in the morning, and kind of, you know, double bunk kids if other kids are coming. So it's kind of fun, you know, it's kind of like a sleepover party.
And that's the thing,
Slumber party,
it
PJ
does
party.
work.
It does, yeah. So it's not as easy, and people don't have as much of their own space. But you know, the people that you're inviting over to spend the night are your friends, right?
So you're all going to be very close.
Exactly, right? You're already close, or you're gonna be.
The other really great option too is just to treat it like a great camping trip. Your friends can sleep in a tent outside, they can use your facilities, or if you're in a nice campground, they can use the campground's facilities.
We've had several friends and family come and stay with us, and we've had wonderful experiences, and we're all still friends. So now we're going to talk about backyards and community space. When you're living in a house, you oftentimes have your own backyard, or you have a dedicated space in your apartment complex or your neighborhood or community where you know you can go out and enjoy that space. When you're RVing, that could be hit or miss.
Yeah, kind of like RV sites can be hit or miss, but you will always have your own campsite and your own dedicated space. Sometimes it's really great, sometimes it's not. But really, more often than not, it's pretty good. You usually have a fair amount of room to let your kids play, for you to enjoy the outdoors as well.
Campgrounds can have playgrounds or fields or community areas. The town you're in can have a community center or a park or a library. All those places can be a place for you to go and be outdoors and enjoy this community space that you don't have because you don't have a typical house and backyard. You can find those places even if they're not right outside your rig every time.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to be a little bit more creative.
So we gave you guys lots of comparison points between living in a house and living in an RV, and there were lots of them.
Hopefully we've given you some things to think about, going over all the differences between a house and an RV. If you have any questions or if you think we missed anything, feel free to leave us a comment below, and we'll see you next time.
Bye! We had a collapsible laundry
Basket.
And the other thing about our it's a how do you say that? Narrower. Yeah. That was awkward.
That was awkward. Giving you a whole bunch of things to consider. I'm losing my train of thought again.
Really gotta get this video up.
Well, that's awkward. I can't figure out how to sit down.
Not like you've been doing it your whole life.